Right now, as you watch this, $84 trillion is quietly changing hands. And the terrifying part is this: most people have no idea it is happening. They will wake up 5 years from now wondering why they feel poorer, why everything costs more, why the gap between them and the wealthy has become an uncrossable canyon. This is not a prediction. This is already underway. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly who is winning, who is losing, and which side of history you are choosing to stand on. The numbers do not lie. According to Cerulli Associates, we are witnessing the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in human history. Over the next 2 decades, the baby boomer generation will pass down an estimated $84 trillion to their heirs and institutions. But here is what makes this different from every wealth transfer before it. The money is not spreading out, it is concentrating. It is flowing upward into fewer and fewer hands while the rest of the population fights over what remains. The Federal Reserve's own data tells a haunting story. The top 1% of Americans now control 32% of all wealth in the nation. The bottom 50%, they own just 2.6%. Read that again. Half of the country holds less than 3% of the wealth. This is not capitalism functioning as intended. This is a system in the final stages of consolidation. And it is not just inheritance driving this divide. Something far more systematic is at play. Over the past 4 years, central banks around the world created more money than in any period in modern history. The United States alone printed nearly 40% of all dollars currently in existence during a short window between 2020 and 2022. That money had to go somewhere, and it did not go into your paycheck. Here is what most people fail to understand. Inflation is not just rising prices. Inflation is wealth redistribution disguised as an economic statistic. When the money supply expands, asset prices rise first. Stocks, real estate, private equity, commodities. These move before wages ever catch up, and wages rarely catch up. Warren Buffett once called inflation a gigantic corporate tapeworm, but it is more accurate to call it a silent tax on anyone who holds their wealth in cash or depends on a salary. Every dollar you save loses purchasing power, while every asset the wealthy own gains nominal value. This is not conspiracy. This is monetary mechanics. And the people who understand it are playing an entirely different game than those who do not. Let me show you what the game actually looks like. In 2021, while average families struggled with lockdowns and job uncertainty, institutional investors went on a buying spree. BlackRock, the largest asset manager on Earth with over $10 trillion under management, began purchasing single-family homes at unprecedented scale. They were not alone. Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent, and dozens of private equity firms followed the same strategy. They bought tens of thousands of homes, often paying above asking price, often in cash. Why would Wall Street suddenly want suburban houses? Because they understood something the average buyer did not. In an inflationary environment, hard assets become the ultimate store of value. Real estate generates rental income. It appreciates with inflation, and most importantly, it can be leveraged. When you borrow money to buy an asset that inflates in value, the debt becomes cheaper over time, while the asset becomes worth more. The wealthy do not fear debt. They weaponize it. Meanwhile, the average person was told to wait for prices to come down, wait for interest rates to normalize, wait for the right moment, and while they waited, the assets transferred. The homes transferred, the opportunity transferred. This brings us to a truth that most financial education will never teach you. The economy has 2 layers. There is the visible economy that you interact with every day, prices at the grocery store, your hourly wage, the interest rate on your savings account. This is the economy of workers. Then there is the invisible economy, the economy of owners. In this layer, returns are measured in equity appreciation, dividend yields, tax-advantaged structures, and leveraged acquisitions. The visible economy punishes you for saving. The invisible economy rewards you for owning. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund, has spent decades studying economic cycles across civilizations. His research revealed a disturbing pattern. Every major empire in history reached a point where wealth inequality became so extreme that social cohesion began to fracture. We are now at levels of inequality that match or exceed those historical inflection points. But here's what Dalio also observed. Before these systems reset, there is always a final acceleration. The wealthy, sensing instability, move faster to consolidate. They acquire land, they acquire businesses, they acquire political influence. They do not wait for permission. They position themselves before the transition, not after. And that is exactly what is happening now. Look at the exposed strategies of ultra-high net worth individuals over the past 3 years. They increased their allocations to real assets. They moved capital into private markets away from public scrutiny. They established residencies in multiple jurisdictions. They converted paper wealth into tangible holdings. They bought farmland. Bill Gates is now the largest private owner of farmland in America, holding approximately 270,000 acres. They bought commodities, they bought stakes in essential infrastructure, water rights, energy production, supply chain nodes. These are not random investment decisions. These are hedges against a system these individuals believe is approaching fundamental change. So the question becomes unavoidable. What should you actually do with this information? The first shift is psychological. You must stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an owner. Consumers exchange time for money, then exchange money for goods that depreciate. Owners exchange money for assets that generate more money. This is not about income level, this is about direction of flow. Even with limited resources, the question must change from what can I buy to what can I own that pays me. The second shift is strategic. You must understand leverage. Not as reckless borrowing, but as intelligent multiplication. The wealthy do not use their own money to acquire assets. They use structured debt, other people's capital, and tax-advantaged vehicles. A mortgage on a rental property is not the same as credit card debt. One builds equity while the other drains it. Learn the difference. Study the structures. The third shift is temporal. You must extend your time horizon. The average person optimizes for this month's comfort. The wealthy optimize for the next decade's positioning. Every financial decision should be filtered through a simple question. Does this move me closer to ownership and leverage, or does it keep me dependent on trading time for money? The fourth shift is informational. You must upgrade your inputs. The financial news designed for mass consumption is noise. It is designed to generate clicks, not clarity. Seek primary sources. Read Federal Reserve statements directly. Study earnings calls. Understand how money actually moves through the banking system. The gap between public narrative and mechanical reality is where opportunity lives. And the fifth shift is perhaps the most difficult. You must accept that fairness is not the operating principle of economic systems. The game is not rigged in the conspiratorial sense. It is simply designed by those who understand it for those who understand it. The rules are available to anyone willing to learn them, but most people never look past the surface. They accept the visible economy as the only economy. And they pay the price in lost purchasing power year after year, decade after decade. Now, none of this is about fear. This is about clarity. The wealth transfer happening right now is not a crisis for everyone. It is a crisis for those who do not adapt. For those who recognize the pattern, this period represents extraordinary opportunity. Assets are repricing. Industries are restructuring. New technologies are creating ownership possibilities that did not exist 10 years ago. The question is not whether the transfer will happen. It is already happening. The question is whether you will be positioned on the receiving end or the losing end. In 1863, during the American Civil War, John D. Rockefeller wrote in his journal that he thanked God for the times of chaos because such times created the greatest opportunities for men of vision. He went on to build Standard Oil during one of the most unstable periods in American history. Every major fortune in history was built not during periods of stability, but during periods of transition. We are in a period of transition right now. The monetary system is evolving. The labor market is being restructured by artificial intelligence. The geopolitical order is fragmenting. The definition of money itself is being questioned by central banks exploring digital currencies. None of this is cause for despair if you understand it. All of it is cause for urgent strategic action. Within the next 10 years, we will see more economic change than in the previous 50 years. The middle class as we know it will either be rebuilt around new principles of ownership and participation, or it will functionally disappear into a two-tier system of owners and renters. The financial infrastructure is being rewritten in real time, and when the rewriting is complete, those who adapted early will hold positions they could never have acquired in normal conditions. Those who waited for clarity will find that clarity arrived too late. This is not about becoming wealthy for the sake of accumulation. This is about understanding that money is a tool for freedom, for security, for the ability to direct your own life instead of having it directed for you. In a world where ownership is concentrating, being an owner is not greed, it is survival. The $84 trillion transfer has already started. The institutions are already moving. The wealthy are already repositioning. The only question that remains is this: where will you be standing when the transfer is complete? Welcome to Moments of Money. Follow and share this YouTube channel to gain more insights about becoming wealthy.